That
Right.
one is called Ghost Riders, or Ghost Rider is the name of the book.
Rider.
So if you want to listen, dude, I'm listening to it right now. I think I'm.
Oh, so you've got it on the Audible?
I've got it on Audible, yeah. Because I don't have time to read, man.
So yeah, dude. Like if I had time to read like that, I would get nothing done. I'd get nothing done. There'd be no Black Smoke Sinners. There'd be no Daytona Bike Week. There'd be no motorcycles. It'd just be like me going, you know.
Yeah. Oh, just so you guys know, we are now live on YouTube. Yeah, dude. I mean, I'll tell you what. I love to listen to books. I don't like to read them.
Yeah,
I don't have the time.
Dude, I know.
Like
if I had the time, it'd be all right. But I don't, man. You know, so that's probably what I'm going to do now while I'm building is get one of those.
Yeah.
And that way I can literally like listen to some really cool stuff while I'm building, and hopefully not screw up while I'm building. Who knows?
Well, what I'll do, man, is I will send that link to you, and if I send it to you, you get it free.
Oh,
and then yeah, man,
awesome.
and then you can just kind of check it all out. But
for sure.
Yeah, man. Let me tell you who we have on deck. So obviously me, we got you, obviously, and my buddy here, Lugnuts Wapo. Lugnuts.
What up?
Lugnuts.
I did not give myself that nickname, but I make that clear. None of my nicknames.
You guys are live, and I'm live on my Instagram, so that's what's up. Tell me where everybody can go to this, fellas. Where are we at?
Yes. Okay. If you go to YouTube, go to the channel Dirty D's. DEEZ. Dirty D's is the YouTube channel. And all they need to do is pop on over there. And here's the really cool thing, man, is we have a phone number where people can call in.
Oh, hell
you might even have some of your friends prank call you. I'll put it up here in the chat in a minute.
Watch out, man, because you know they will, bro. They'll just be like, that dude, what's up with that guy? What you doing?
And then on top of that, on YouTube, on the side chat, because we're live, people are chatting on the side. And a lot of them are YouTube creators. Just about all of them are motorcycle riders.
Awesome.
And, yeah, man.
Well, we just got a guy that chimed in from London. So hello from London.
Hello, mate.
So, okay, well, one more time, homeboy. What's the channel to go to on YouTube?
It's Dirty D's, DEEZ, DIRTY space DEEZ.
You heard the man, Dirty D's. Go to YouTube. We're on live right now. Check it out.
Yeah.
You might learn something. You might not. I don't know. We'll figure it out later.
It's about to get cool.
Hey, did you see the comment by Street Fighter ATL?
No.
I'm a former high school English teacher with 2 degrees in English, and I read most books these days. Oh, there you go. You have it from someone that actually.
He's like, yeah, we don't read. I don't want to read. It's all good.
We're past that. It's 2020.
I like to learn, but I hate to read.
Yeah, exactly.
And by the way, so Lugnuts, we got the Texas connection right here now, man, because Lugnuts works in Dallas at a Harley spot.
Oh, right on.
Them, don't you?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I did 2 dealerships in Dallas, Grand Prairie and Carrollton, Texas.
Nice. So you're Lugnuts. You're right. You're 3 hours from me, and then D, you're up like an SA, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you're an hour. So yeah, we got the trifecta going on here. All we need is somebody calling from Houston, and we have all the big boys covered.
I'll tell you what, man, the next time you come down to San Antonio, if you got any time, give me a holler, man. We'll go grab a
absolutely,
you know, Big Red or something like that. You know how we do it. You know how we do it down here.
You're speaking my language.
I know. I'm born and raised here too, man. How cool.
That's awesome.
So look, right now we've got some people popping in. From time to time during this talk, man, I like to go through the chat and just give some shout outs to those guys. But before we do that, I want to introduce you to everybody who's out there. And I'm going to go through some of these names. But we have tonight, guys, it's a pretty special event because we have Xavier Muriel. Xavier's probably thinking, oh man, it's just me. You know, I'm just Texas dude. And, I've done this and I've done that. Look, this dude, the more research I did, I almost feel like I already know you, man, because I've been creeping on your Instagram, your Facebook. I got Providence Cycle Works up over here. We're going to put that up on the screen here in a minute, in fact.
Right on.
And dude, the more stuff that I was going through, I'm like, this guy has 9 lives. I
mean, you know, man, there should have been a couple of times when I should have had a couple of those taken away from me, you know. But
yeah, right.
you know, look, at the end of the day, man, I'm a super blessed cat. I've been able to do some really amazing things in life, but not on my own. You know, I've got a lot of help with some amazing people. And a lot of times there's just a work greater than myself at work. There's a power greater than myself at work. And I've got to do music for a long, long time. And again, like you said, man, I'm a punk kid from Austin, Texas, so literally in the outskirts of Round Rock, born in San Antonio, but you know, chased a dream. And thank God my father was there to basically one Saturday morning while we were having breakfast, look at me and tell me, oh, so you don't want to go to college? No, you know, what do you want to do? I want to be a rock star. And he said, okay, but just, you know that it's going to come with more sacrifices than you ever thought possible. And from then on, man, it was just all about just doing whatever I could to try to get closer to that dream. And I've carried that over from not only, you know, music, but motorcycles. And to be honest with you, a lot of people were kind of haters in the beginning, bro. They were like, oh, so let me get this straight. You were a successful musician, drummer, and now you're a bike builder who thinks he's a bike builder, and blah, 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 and yada, yada, yada. And the real truth about it is I was working in a custom shop, moonlighting in a custom shop, and working at an HD shop as a parts counter guy during the day, way before I went to LA and became that guy in that band. So in essence, I've always been into motorcycles. I kind of just came full circle. You know, I got my first bike when I was 5. My old man showed up one Saturday afternoon with a trailer full of motorcycles, and my mom didn't speak to him for a month, bro. So yeah, I mean, who gets a little Honda MR50 at 5? Me. Wow. And my brother got a Elsinore 125, and my dad got that ugly ass orange HD AMF one lunger 250 SX, that orange one that was the most god awful Harley ever. And then now everybody wants one, you know. And I remember being at the Harley Museum when Buck Cherry we did one of their huge events. And they took us into that little secret room that has every year model of every bike produced in these huge, like there's 8 of them tall, 4 wide. And it's just these racks that go, whoa. And the whole warehouse is full. And I'll be damned, dude, if I didn't look up one glance and there was my old man's Harley. I looked at the guy and I said, that's a 74 250 SX. He's like, yeah, there was only 500 of those made because they were crap. They were one lunger. Nobody wanted them and they blew up. And I go, how much is that thing worth now? He goes, a mint one is about 200,000. And I was like, you know, so, but so, you know, I mean, again, I just go full bore with whatever it is that my heart tells me that I want to do. Cause, you know, truth be told, towards the end of that tenure with that band, it was like a lot of situations you hear of that, the fun kind of went out of it, you know, and I had to ask myself, was I still having fun? And was I true to my father's, the wish that I told him that I would get out of anything that I wasn't having fun at? And no matter how much money, notoriety, fame, and all that other bullshit, because trust me, man, all that stuff is just, it's smoke and mirrors. And it's not until you get on the other side of the TV screen and you look behind it that you realize there's a lot more to it than a lot of people think. And I'm right there with you because I had no idea. I thought it was just a good, fun time. And hey, we're partying and playing some rock and roll and I'm on a jet here and I'm all that. I had no idea it was actual work. You know, right. I had no idea because that's why they call it the music business. They don't call it the, hey, music, let's hang out, friends, and party. But right. You know, all that stuff, now at my ripe old age and the things that I've learned from it, if you can take that and understand what it's really like, it's okay. And I apply that to the transition that I did to motorcycles because I really, I wanted to get back into something that made sense to me and that I really, really loved. And it's not that I don't love music because I still love music. As a matter of fact, when I left the band, it's Chris Callan from Cycle Source, who's very responsible, and Mr. Billy Lane, for this part of my life, because Chris came up to me at Sturgis one year. I think we were opening up for Def Leppard or somebody else. And he's like, hey, he'd actually asked my guitar player, Keith, who is a bike aficionado as well. He said, hey, man, I want you to write an article for Cycle Source Magazine. And, every month, just kind of talk about what you want. And Keith straight up said, no, I'm not your guy, but Xavier is. So that's how it all kind of started, man. So he said, how would you feel about writing an article for a magazine? I was like, bro, I'm not a journalist. I don't know anything about that crap. I love getting greasy and turning wrenches and breaking cymbals with pieces of wood. I don't know anything about writing. And he was really, really matter-of-factly. He just said, hey, man, what do you do when you sit around in your garage and you work on motorcycles and you hang out with your friends? I go, well, we sit around my garage, we work on motorcycles, and we talk to, and he's like, yeah, just write it all down. And that's literally how it started. And that was like 6 years ago. And it just kind of snowballed. So he gave me creative freedom to do whatever I wanted. So I'd literally go to these towns, and instead of going to the HD dealerships or the big whatever was happening, because remember, right about that time was still the chopperdom thing. The whole biker build off was still, it was just coming to an end, but people were still into custom motorcycles. So I would find the mom and pop shops that got no love, that got no glory, that, and I would go in there and I'd sit with these old timers, and they would just tell me these amazing stories about how they did it back in the day before they had, CNC machines and this and that and electronics and digital readout. And I was absolutely infatuated with that, because it was as real as it's ever going to get, from those guys. Yes. From those guys who were craftsmen, who didn't go to school for it. They learned it from their buddy, who learned it from their uncle, who learned it from their grandfather. And that's how it started. And I got really involved in motorcycling again, and in the publication, and going to the rallies that we were already playing. Buck Cherry was already playing all of these rallies, Laconia, Daytona, Sturgis. So it was a natural kind of transition. Yeah. And then one thing led to another, and I wound up meeting Billy Lane, and that stirred a whole other thing, because now he wasn't the guy that I was looking at on TV as the dreaded rock star, crazy, bike builder, like the guys using kitchen sink parts or whatever. Yeah. He was just a dude. And we became really, really good friends, in so much that he built me one of my first custom chopper that I have still. That was the last bike to come out of the Melbourne shop. Wow. And he came out on the road with us, was just a dude hanging out, had a walkie-talkie. Nobody knew who he was. And that's how we wanted it. And I started picking his brain about stuff like, where do you get your ideas for these tanks and da-da-da? And next thing you know, man, it's like the beginning of 2016. And I'm like, okay, something's going on inside of here that's telling me it's time. And I remember when I spoke to the powers that be in the band, and I said, this is what's up. And it was not a hard decision, because I knew in my heart of hearts that I wasn't enjoying playing in that particular band anymore. And it wasn't because of dudes or money or touring. It wasn't just one reason. It was a culmination of a lot of them, which led me to make that decision. Well, immediately after that, Chris, once again, like he does, goes, hey, man, I need you to build a motorcycle for my inaugural In Motion show at the Lone Star Rally in Galveston. And I need you to be an invited builder. I go, are you high? I'm not a builder. I'm just a guy who loves to break stuff and then try to put it back together. He goes, yeah, no, that's okay. I get it. So he literally invited me put that poster together. And next thing I know, he's like, oh yeah, and I need a name. You got to have a name. I'm like, I don't even have a shop. I'm just a dude. Yeah. So I came up with the name, and one thing led to the other. And I was actually in Florida helping Billy do the Sons of Speed stuff, which I've been a part of that since the first race, which is all vintage motorcycle racing in Daytona. Yeah. And Chris was kind enough to hook me up with the guys at SNS and then Baker, and literally went, here, figure it out. So there I was at Billy's shop, and Billy's like, yeah, figure it out. So I built that bike for that show, but I'd already done a couple of bikes before that in Los Angeles in my 1-car garage, because I needed something to do when I came off of the road to keep me out of trouble.
Yeah.
And B, to just, I really wanted to learn how to do the things that I saw guys on Biker Build Off do. And again, guys like Billy Lane, Paul Cox, Jeff Cochran, Will Ramsey, all of these guys that I've known in the industry that were there that would stop paying people to do the stuff that you want to do.
Yeah.
So Billy sent me my first welder, and I was just, I have no idea what I'm doing. And that's how it started, man. It's literally started just like that. And I came back to Texas because I didn't want to live in LA anymore. And one thing led to the other, and blah, blah, blah. And I built a bike for Michael Lichter's exhibit that, I mean, come on, dude, it's Michael Lichter. And when he invites you, and I was told by the heavyweights in the industry, you don't say no to this one. You don't.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that not if you want to do something in the motorcycle industry, you do not say no to him. And I'm like, all right. So there I go. And I built this bike, and it did the exhibit, and it did really well. And then it turned into Easy Rider Bike of the Year 2019. And then I won. Yeah. And again, bro, like, I walk into my garage, and somebody put this on Instagram one night, how fortunate and grateful he was that he could walk into his garage every night and look at the stuff in his garage, the motorcycles that he's building and the stuff that he has, and go, this is insane. This shouldn't be happening. Man. And that's what I do. You know, I mean, I get to walk into my garage and every day go, wow, I love doing this. And again, if this stops being fun and I stop loving it, I'm out. Yeah. You know,
dude, I cannot imagine how you feel looking at all that, because that's how I feel looking at my one bike, and it's pretty stock.
Totally.
I love coming home and being like, I got a motorcycle in my garage.
The beautiful thing about that is that you're in touch with that feeling. You know, it's like, I go into my office and I look at all the stuff that I've accomplished with the music, and it's all great, and I love that. But again, it's just a thing. It's like plaques and stuff on the wall. But the thing that I've come to understand now is that's all memories. Those are experiences that I've got to have in life that a lot of people don't get and love to live vicariously through me or ask questions about it. I'm like, yeah, dude, when I played the Budokan, the only thing I could think of was like, shit, this is where Cheap Trick recorded I Want You to Want Me. Not that I've played the Budokan, but that I was on the stage where Bunny Carlos was going to get, you know, that blows my mind.
Man,
and
oh man.
The ability getting a phone call from one of the guys that I adore and that mentor me sometimes on a daily basis, like, hey man, what's going on? How are you? You good? I saw your bike in St. Louis. Oh my God, that's so awesome. And I'm like a giddy little fanboy. I'm like, you know?
Yeah. What about having drinks backstage with Tommy Lee? I saw the picture and I'm like, dude, who the hell is this man? Where were you guys? Okay, were you guys in Japan, or what's the story on that?
That was the first time that Buck Cherry went to Japan. We did a bunch of dates with Motley when they came back on the Red and White and Crew tour. Now, a little history on that. Tommy is the reason why I play drums. Like, I literally saw him and Eric Carr, God rest his soul. I saw those two guys and I was like, I don't ever want to do anything else in life again except play drums. And I didn't know anything about drums. So to actually be able to go to Japan and hang with him and tell him the story that he told Gene Simmons, because I looked at him the first time we were in the dressing room. I said, hey man, do you remember that interview you did when you met Gene Simmons for the first time? And you said, hey, you're the reason why I play rock and roll. And I want you to know that. He's like, yeah, bro, I remember that. I was so fucked up. And I said, I'm telling you that now. You're the reason why I'm standing here. So thank you. And he was just like, oh man, you know, and he's a tall cat. He's like 6'5". So he gives me this hug and I'm like right in his armpit. And I'm like, oh God. And I had literally just come off a stage on the first night in Tokyo, and he was getting ready to go on. and he invited me to his dressing room, and he had this, this is crazy. He had this table set up with a tablecloth on it, and he rips off the tablecloth, and there's about 25 red Solo cups with half shots of Jaeger in there. And he's like, bro, you and me, you're on one end, I'm on the other. Here we go. And this guy's about to go on stage. And literally we just started pounding him. And the next thing I know, I'm like, man, I got about 35 minutes before this hits me, and I got to find my way to my bus. And he went up there and just played like a god. Wow. And then the next day when I saw him, he's like, hey, bro. And I'm just like, oh, I was green, laying on the floor in the dressing room. My tour manager was like, Tommy, stay away from him tonight. Just stay away from him. Good. But I mean, how do you say no to that? You know, the guy who's, it'd be no different than if Indian Larry asked me to do a burnout with him or something like that. I'd be like, yes.
Yes. How do you say no? I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. We were riding bikes and we stop off to the gas station and whatnot. I don't know how it came up, but he goes, you know, man, did I ever tell you about the time I met Willie Nelson? I said, no, what do you mean? He goes, nice. Yeah, my brother was doing some lighting and they invited us onto the bus, and there are a bunch of guys over there and they're passing around this joint. So I don't even smoke, but you're there with Willie Nelson. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah. You just kind of let him blow it at you and maybe get a contact. I don't know.
Some things
it's called a freebie. I don't know. You know,
it's called a freebie. But he was like, man, I mean, it's kind of one of those situations where, yeah, if you're with those dudes, you want to be in that experience.
Yeah,
you want to have this story.
And that's the whole thing for that whole rant that I went on. It's all about the experience. I have some experiences in life that are absolutely riding next to Billy Lane on a 1913 Perry Mac, no brakes, no clutch, direct drive, push start only at the first Sons of Speed. I mean, you can't make stuff like that up, you know.
Insane, dude.
It's been a weird, crazy ride, but I wouldn't change it for the world, man. You know, I wouldn't change it for the world.
No, man, absolutely. I'm going to get Lugnuts in on the conversation. I know he's got some questions, but before we do, let me go through and read off some of the names of some folks who are out there in the chat. Many of them are YouTube creators. Some of them are just motorcycle riders, and some of them hopefully are just grandmas baking cookies that love my channel. I doubt it.
But I like cookies.
I doubt it. But we've got Chuckster. We've got the guys from Baggers and Brews in the house. The bearded bobber who just bought an Indian Challenger. We've got Scouse Adventures. He's coming in from Canada. Ozark Riders, TNT Productions, JC Cycles, man, the list goes on and on. Patrick Hattrick in the house. Anonymous Biker USA. Who else is here? Man, the list just, like I say, we just keep on going.
Right on.
Yeah, a lot of people from all over the place. Blacktop Devils in the house. Prairie Boy 77. But while we're talking, what I'm going to do is share a screenshot. Actually, I think I can share my screen and get your webpage up here for Providence Cycle Works. So let me work on that. Lugnuts, did you have something technical or just story-wise?
Man, first of all, congrats on winning Easyriders Magazine Bike of the Year in 2019.
Thank you, my brother.
That is a sick bike.
Thank you, my man.
It is as clean as it gets. That's what we're seeing right now from you sharing. But so I've noticed that there's been a little bit more of there's this trend going on with pan shovel mix motor build, which they're awesome. Now, can you speak to maybe the technical aspect of it? How do you make that work? I mean, they're not that different when it comes to the rocker boxes, but there is still something that needs to be thought out when you're
in all transparency, Lugnut, that is an actual motor that came out of Larry's shop, built by Paul Cox himself. So that is, and without getting into, I'm going to turn down my stereo here, so I'm getting rowdy. In all honesty, that is one of the last motors to really come out as far as built by from my understanding, Paul through Larry, as far as the legacy, I believe but that is as true of that type of motor that those guys created. Really, I mean, there's been a lot of people who have done it that have, I don't know whether either copied it or have gotten one and then just dissected it, but that's the real deal, because that pan, and I just had the pleasure of working on it the other day for the first time, because when I had it in Daytona and then I had it in Sturgis, I beat the shit out of it. It's not, I did, bro. I did. I took it to the Golden Bolt in LA. I rode through the streets of Hollywood in LA, and I beat the shit out of it. I beat the shit out of it in Sturgis and in Daytona and here in Austin and surrounding. It's not a showpiece. It is an absolute rider.
You can actually ride it. And I think there's like a lot to be said about that, just because a lot of people do build these bikes and do build, especially when it comes to rigids. Riding a rigid is no joke. And a lot of people,
it's a commitment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's like the right word for it, because a lot of people don't really understand that, like, oh, it looks great. You know, they see like all these chopper shows and it's like, I could ride that every day. It's like, it's a commitment. Yeah, for sure.
And the fact that, you know, I mean, I kind of tried to make it as comfortable at some point as possible by putting a manual Paul Cox rigid air system in it, so that when my scrawny little butt started taking a beating, I could stop at a light and give it a few pumps, and then I'm on some airbags, and it works wonderfully. It really does. But it is a foot hydraulic clutch with a jockey shift, and the motor, I actually got to do not a top end, but I had a little bit of a head gasket weep, and I couldn't stand it. It just bummed me out. So I pulled it off, and I actually got to dissect how Paul made that motor as far as that head. And it's not just the thing of like putting shovel heads on a pan bottom. That's easy. That's an easy.
Yeah, that's the easy part. Yeah.
That's the easy way, right on, right off. And there's guys who do that, and that's rad. It's cool. He actually took that pan, pulled the spigot off or the intake, welded it up, replaced it with the proper spigot on the right side for the intake to match the shovel band style, and then redid the whole bottom end or the whole mounting surface to match the bolt pattern on shovels barrels. So there's a whole lot of work that went into that I didn't even really realize, because I was like, this is a bitchin' motor, and it used to belong to my guitar player. And it just sat there in our storage for a while, and I was like, hey man, I got to have that motor. And you know, one thing, like I was telling Deez, one thing led to the other, and I wanted to another. It never just, when you try to plan things out, it never works. It's just like, whatever. But then something just falls in your lap, and that bike, man, is, I mean, not only is she really good looking, but she's a rider. And I remember the first time I took it somewhere in Daytona, I did Michael Lichter's day run. So he's sitting on the back of a bagger backwards with a helmet and a microphone talking to the driver. And he's loaded up with camera gear, dude. And he's got about 12 dudes riding with him. And he's going like this. And you go over here and you go this way and you come up closer. And he's just, you know. And I was riding with some guys that were on Pans and Nux. And then we were riding with some dudes that were on Dynas and dressers, and those dudes were like, and I was like, all right, man, either shit or get off the pot. This is it. So I put that Baker 6-speed to work, and I'm just like, I'm jamming gears, dude, and I'm tucked like this. Yeah. And we're like in some God forbidden road in Daytona, and I don't have any glasses. It's at night, and I'm just like, wow, I'm like doing probably 80 on this thing, and I'm like, well, if you're gonna blow, you're gonna blow now. Yeah. And she didn't.
It probably helped that it was a Baker 6-speed as opposed to the stock 5-speed.
Oh yeah, no, dude, my whole face would have rattled off. You know, there's no way.
It's what's wild to me is, so and you totally understand this when you get on everybody has always says like, well, you know, there's this common idea that, you know, Harley riders are just all about the brand. They're not really about, you know, actually riding, or your trailer queens. And we've all heard that when it comes to actual, you know, chopper builds. And as we were talking, as you were saying, there's on top of that, there's a certain kind of soul that comes with the motor.
Yes. Yes.
And when you ride, you feel that. And when, I guess, So I guess I don't know how well of a question this is going to be, but
Mhm.
so I've ridden both a shovel, I've ridden iron heads. I mean, I've ridden several AMF era bikes, and
Mhm.
I mean, there's no way really to describe how awesome it feels to feel the engine as it sits.
Yeah.
So every single motor has its own personality, all the way up to, from the old, iron heads, all the way to the new, even flat heads, all the way to the MH. Yeah, correct. So when it comes to, like, obviously, as I was asking about, the mix of the shovel pan head, I wonder if you feel like there's like a different kind of soul of its own, not only because it was, because of who built it, but because of the combination of everything that was made. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because technically, when the, like Chris Callan always likes to say, they were glorified tractor mechanics who built some of this stuff way back in the day.
Oh yeah.
And there is something definitely different about her than my panhead or even my shovel head. There's just something about the way she feels. And ironically, for it being a 53 motor, it doesn't vibrate as much as my 57. It, for some reason, it just and it could be the chassis setup, it could be the rake, it could be the size of tubing, who knows? But she has her own sound and her own feel. And the one thing that I have realized is it's got a different sweet spot for getting into second and then third. Whereas my pan and my shovel, they will go past that sweet spot and then it kind of does its thing. But she's got like her own footprint, man, and her own thumbprint. And it's weird. And it's funny that you brought that up, because I remember being in Sturgis riding down by Bear Butte Mountain, and I'd hit this spot where I was kind of tucked, and it was so smooth and comfortable. I thought I was on a Softail Evo.
Yeah.
That's weird, because that never happens with anything pre-Evo. You're like, either your teeth are rattling out of your mouth, or there's oil everywhere. You know what I'm saying? So
what cracks me up about that comment is because I've also ridden a Softail Evo, and at high RPMs, those will also shake your teeth.
Oh, dude,
out of your gums. There's something to be said about that. If it's not as comfortable as an Evo, that's having ridden like the old school Harley.
Oh yeah, you'd think you were on a 38 knucklehead tank shift, just like I've had that. I've had that too. And that was with all the bells and whistles, the M6 and the the belt. It didn't have a chain, and it had the progressive suspension. And now, dude, about 77 miles an hour, you're just like, okay, slow down, stop, just get off. So, but all of that older stuff, like you said, has its own soul, man. It has its own. And I think that if you're lucky enough to feel that and understand it, how those motors do what they do, sound the way they sound, and feel the way they feel, man, you're that much better off, because then you can go jump on an M8, and you can go jump on a Street Glide and a Fat Bob, and you can go, yeah, this is cool. It feels good. It's comfortable. It shifts. It's smooth. But it doesn't have that thing, and I'm all about that thing. Now, talk to me when I'm 65. I may say, fuck all this. I'm getting
to an M8. Screw it.
Yeah, and trust me, I have two buddies right now. They're like, bro, you got to ride one. You got to ride one. I'm like, no, because I know me. I'll get on it, and I'll really like it, and I'll be like, maybe I should sell the 50, and I don't want to do that. There's something to be said for coming home on a long Sunday ride and getting off and going, yeah, I feel her right there in my lower back. I feel her, so that's part of the beauty, man. That's part of it.
Yeah, man. It makes that post ride hot shower feel even better, doesn't it?
Yeah. And now, don't get me wrong, I'm not so much of an egotistical, prideful man that, I'm going to ride my thing all the way to Cali. No, I did that once. I rode that chopper. Me, Billy, my guitar player, who was riding a 65 pan. Billy was riding his 38. I rode that chopper from Melbourne, Florida to Hollywood, California. Never again.
Damn, that is a hike.
That's definitely a one-time experience for sure.
If you go on YouTube and you punch in Billy Lane, Xavier Muriel, Keith Nelson, you can see that. And it's actually up on Billy's, either on his Facebook or on his Instagram feed. that documentary that we shot. And again, that was almost 12, 14 years ago. So I was a much younger guy, and it was awesome. But like, I remember thinking, okay, if I do this again, I'm doing it on a dresser, I'm gonna do it on a dresser, so
absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely it's definitely one of my bucket list items, is to just take something of that vintage and then just go for it.
And and again, back then I knew nothing about motorcycles other than where to put the gas. They needed oil and the basic essentials and how to shift it. And it was, a 4-out, 4-out, 2-up chopper, 8-over Springer front end, tank shift, pan head. And it was just like the most awesome thing in the world, bro. I was like, I cannot believe I'm doing this. And then I got done and I went, I'm never doing that again. And I thought about it. I'm like, I'll take another trip out to Sturgis or somewhere far, and I'm going to do it on a nice, comfy bike, and I'm just going to take my time, and that would be cool. But oh, look, there I am. Great.
But,
we're gonna get a little
hey
bit
man, a couple of less gray hairs right there.
Yeah, dude, that right there's a couple less gray hairs and a friend with a bottle, homeboy.
So you are you sponsored, or were you sponsored by the symbol? Yeah.
I still have the same endorsers today that I did back then. Sabian cymbals, Yamaha drums, Vader drumsticks, and Remo drum heads. Amazing, and the most beautiful thing about that, again, is like, when to different musicians, there's always that one point where you go, I've made it. And to me, it was never about the endorsements or even playing like Madison Square Garden or those type of things. It was like, I'm on a tour bus, because again, I related my entire musical experience at that point in time to videos, because videos were everything back in the day. And the Journey video that showed that one spot where they're cruising through the mountains and there's 7 tour buses in a row, I was like, that's it, man. That is it, but
that is
getting the opportunity to endorse these companies that to this day are super supportive of whatever I do. I called them each up personally and said, hey, I'm no longer with the band. And they were like, cool, we don't endorse the band, we endorse you. And I'm like, okay, cool, great. So, and that's awesome. An awesome feeling in a sense, because again, I was a nobody, dude. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody would sniff me, and still continued not to give me any love. And then you start selling 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900,000 records. People start knocking on your door. They're like, hey, so we'd like you to try. And I'm like, yeah, really, bro? Where were you when my drum tech was having to tape my sticks together because I was so broke I couldn't afford sticks? I'm cool, thanks very much. I'm loyal, and I'm sticking to my companies. And I've carried that over into the motorcycle. When companies ask me if I'm interested in maybe trying out some of their equipment and they want to take a shot on a nobody like me, I'm like, absolutely. And then you get a couple of awards and things happen, and then there they are knocking out your door, and I'm like, yeah, it's cool, thank you, I appreciate it, but I'm going to stick with this over here, because that's a thing like in any other business, man. Loyalty is a hard thing to find, and we live in a day now that everything is such instant gratification that it's on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. And myself as well as a bunch of other guys, I don't consider myself a newcomer because I'm an old dude. When I see other dudes that are like 20s that are building badass choppers, and they've got that fire in their eye, and they're hungry and they're excited, and they're saving their money to be able to take their one garage built bike to Daytona or Sturgis, and they go, hey man, so how did you do it? I'm like, don't screw anybody over, man. It's not worth it, and just be true to yourself, because at some point in time, all of that stuff goes away and you're still stuck with you, or you can be left with you. And if you're okay with that, that's a great place to be, and trying to just make all of, Chris is always harping on me, Chris Callan from Cycle Source, that if there's any one person who has his literally thumbs on the pulse of the motorcycle industry, it's that dude. And he's forever trying to impress upon not only the people that are still here, that are lucky to be here, because as well as I do, you can go down the roster from people from 2002 to 2020, And 97% of those guys are gone.
Yep.
To whatever degree, whether they screwed themselves out, they gave up, there was no money, their bikes weren't, whatever, they're not there. So the icons that are still in the industry to this day, you know, it's imperative that they try to set an example for the young guys, because much like anything else, vintage cars, vintage motorcycles, vintage guitars, drums, they weren't vintage till somebody started buying them all up. And then they're nowhere to be found. And if they are, they're worth a lot of money. But like Lugna and I were just talking about, it's that soul, it's that thing that sets the normal cat from the guy who really gets what that motorcycle is about. And that's what Chris is always trying to impress on people, is we've got to come back to the industry where it's about motorcycles. It's not about categories and segregation and this has to be that and that has to be this. Man, it's all motorcycles. It doesn't matter what type, what brand, 2 wheels, 3 wheels, 4, who cares, as long as it's a motorcycle, got a motor. And because like anything else, if we don't keep that alive, it's gonna die.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely, man.
There's nothing worse than being in a rock band, being on the road and hearing from all of the major people in the world saying rock and roll is dead. And then you're thinking, well, how can that be? Because it's only February and I have tour dates all the way through to December and every one of my shows are sold out. How is it dead? Well, it's not about the people there. It's about the people that we haven't reached. So it's all about the guys that are interested in motorcycles, that are sitting, you know, in their dad's car and they hear a Harley go by and it just blows their ears and they go, what is that? I want that. That's the guys we got to reach, and gals, you know?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, man. And we've got some gals out here in the chat too,
cool.
that are hardcore riders, man. I mean, shoot, I've ridden with some that I'm trying to keep up with.
Yeah.
I want to get back to something that you said, Xavier, that really rang big time for me when I was thinking about it. And I'm not a motorcycle builder, but you put it in the motorcycle builder reference. I see it in other ways, which is sometimes the person that wins or the people that become successful are just the ones who kept showing up.
Yeah, dude. Listen, you hear it all your life as a kid growing up, whether you're going to school, football, soccer, baseball, tennis, ping pong, whatever. It's that next one that you don't try. It's the one time when you say that you're beat, that you can't, that you're not good enough, this or that. It's maybe that next one right around the corner that would be the one that breaks you. And I have always tried to go back to and remember that, because perfect example, the year that I agreed to do that first build for Chris and Cycle Source and the Lone Star in Motion show, I was sitting on that floor with that motorcycle at 3 a.m. and I had to be on the road at 7. And I called Chris at 3 a.m. I said, bro, I don't know if I can do this and get this bike done before your show. And he plainly said, hey man, do you remember that one time you told me that your bus broke down in France and you had to get on the opening band's bus and spoon with your bass player in the back lounge so that the whole band could get to the venue? And I go, yeah. He goes, you didn't quit then. Why would you quit now? So I just had to have somebody else put it in a different perspective, because in that moment, there was no quitting. There was no failure. We were going to make it to that event. We were going to make the show, because I don't know how many people there didn't pay their Visa bill that month, so they could have enough money to buy a ticket to go to that show. So it's not just about me as a musician or me as the builder, because there's a lot of guys that I have met in the short time that I've been doing this. They're like, dude, you don't know how rad it is to meet you. I loved your band, but I love your motorcycles. And I came here specifically because I wanted to see you, meet you, and say, hey. And I'm like, you have no idea what that does for me, because I was that guy. I was the guy who saved the money. I was the guy who wanted to go meet that guy who I saw one of his drum solos or saw one of his motorcycles and went, how do you do that? So it's all just a full circle thing, you know?
Yeah, it really is, man. I mean, it reminds me of a story I heard about Vin Diesel, the actor, right? And he says when he went to Hollywood, he went with like 7 other people and they were all trying to make it. And a lot of them were better actors than he was. But eventually, you know, some of them went home, some of them got married, some of them just stayed waiting tables in LA. And he stuck around and kept going. Yeah. Because he felt like he owed it to himself and he owed it to the people who had supported him back in the day.
Absolutely. And when we first got back together in 2004, nobody would sniff us. No management would take us on, no record label. We were turned down by everybody. We were too old. We were too tattooed. Imagine that.
No way.
At the time. And it was through sheer perseverance that we said, okay, we can't cut it. We can't get it here. Let's go to Japan and get a record deal. And we literally did, took that very little money, came back and made that first record. And if anybody's listening, if you have that record, look at the pictures on it. They're all like this. And they were done with a Nikon point and shoot because we didn't have any money, dude. It was like click, click. That's the record. That is literally the cover art. And
y'all were trending before 2020 came around, man. That's what everybody's doing nowadays.
Exactly. Yeah.
You were first.
We were way ahead of the curve, but only because we were broke ass, you know? So, but it's the same thing of like that determination and perseverance is everything. And it doesn't matter what it is, music, motorcycles, mowing lawns, building birdhouses. Right. It doesn't matter, you know? And I think that a lot of people sell themselves short and they have such amazing potential, but they just don't know how to tap it. And a lot of that has to do with the willingness to keep learning, to shut your mouth sometimes and just open your ears. Cause you can learn a lot if you just shut your mouth sometimes and open your ears. Trust me, man. I've been shown that time and time again. Like, well, no, bro, if you did it, like, you're like, yeah, no, watch. And, oh, that's why. Okay. Yeah. Ding.
Smart people listen more than they talk, right?
Yeah. And again, that's not an art that comes easy. You know, you have to have years and years of having a hammer hit against your head for you to go, oh yeah, okay, you know.
You do, man. You know, it reminds me, this whole discussion reminds me of something that I heard recently. The guy said, many people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in a decade.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For me, that was like, wow, man.
Yeah. And if you just stop for a minute and you shut everything off and you think about that and you dissect it, how simplistic it is, yet how ungraspable sometimes it is to some people, you know. And
it is, man.
And I'm going through, I mean, you know, again, I went from that world to this world. I don't know anything about like the business and LLCs and how to do this and marketing and social media. I had people that did all that stuff and it was great because I sat down and went like this and got paid and was like, oh, that's great. You know, now it's all encompassed. It's fabrication. It's learning. It's calling the guys in the middle of the afternoon, like Jeff Cochran, and speaking and go, why isn't this working? Or Paul Cox, what am I doing wrong? Or, okay, let's break it down. But it's all a learning curve. But again, you have to have the willingness to want to learn, because if you don't, then where are you going? You're going nowhere, you know. And some of the most important people in my life are always telling me that, you know, that it never ends. Old timers to this day that have been working on knuckles that they bought off the showroom floor are still learning stuff about motorcycles. And I'm like, is that even possible? And they're like, oh yeah, son, you don't even know that one little wedge key. And I'm like, you know, so
you know what, man, I was wondering, Xavier, can you talk a little bit, because we're talking about, you know, the advice that we've got, old timers, what's affected us. I read something, and maybe it was when I was creeping on your Instagram, or it could be Facebook, or I don't know what story I was reading as I'm like getting ready for this. And I think it was your dad who said, never pay someone to fix something that you can fix yourself. Did I get that right? Or like
exhaust all options before you pay someone to do something. And that, you know, my old man was amazing at saying one, and he always said them in Spanish, so they sound a lot better. They sound like Ricardo Montalban.
That's the best way, man.
Yeah,
Spanish is the way.
Yeah. He would go, mijo, and then he'd say it, and I'd be like, okay, you know. But yeah, he'd say exhaust all options before you pay somebody to do something. And I didn't really understand that till I really started to do the hands-on application of building a motorcycle, because I so much wanted to do it by myself because I'm a stubborn Latin man. But it got to the point where there were times where I had to call in the heavyweights. I had to call the people I knew that could do this in their sleep. And I would feel weird about it, but they too at one point didn't know how to do it either. So they were taught by somebody. So now we're back to that whole thing of giving back and playing ping pong. I hit you the ball, you hit me the ball. And it now makes all the sense in the world, because before I get to a situation where I don't give up, I just realized that the more I try to pound a square peg in a round hole, I'm going to get frustrated. So at this stage of the game, time is money, and aggravation is not something that I like to keep inside. So I'll literally get to that point and go, okay, have I tried everything I possibly know? Have I even YouTubed or got on a forum and blah, blah, blah? And if it doesn't work, then I call somebody and I go, hey man, I am totally out of wits here. I don't know what I'm doing. What do you suggest? And it's usually something as simple as torch angle, amperage, and flow speed. And I'm like, that's it. That's it. But had I just kept trying that thing, now you get into the definition of insanity, approaching a problem the same way and thinking you're going to get a different outcome. So it's really important, I feel, to anybody who's trying to accomplish anything, try it. Yeah. And then when you get to that point, and you will know that point, ask for help, because that's the hardest thing for, I think, of any man to do, is to ask for help. Hell, we won't even ask for directions. What are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? So
that's right. Yeah. So true.
And I would definitely not be at this stage. And I don't even want to say level, because I'm not at a level. I'm just a dude who loves to use that TIG welder, that hammer, that bandsaw to try to get what's in here onto that table. I'm not that guy. There are other guys that are that level that, sure, there's one of them on the wall right now, but I don't want to ever feel like I've gotten there, because I remember what that felt like with the music. It was just like, oh, and then you realize, man, there's some 21-year-old kid that's in the opening band at 11 o'clock that can whoop your ass on the drums. So right. You better bring it down a notch, and that's true with everything, so there's a certain, way I like to keep this, and I'm good with that. I don't think about all that other stuff, because again, it's all going to go away someday, and I'm still left with this, my skin, and this right here.
That's it.
So
that's it.
And share your stuff, man. Again, I cannot thank those guys who literally took their time and their machines and went, what do you need help with? Because if we all keep what we know, how do we spread the knowledge? How do we keep the industry, the love, the passion? That's it, bro. The passion. How do we keep the passion alive for whatever it is?
And I think that's how tribes or bands of people, not musical bands, but you don't see each other as a threat. You see each other as, I want to share with you what I know how to do, and I want you to take that to the next level so that I can open my eyes and say, wow, okay, so now that triggers a new way for me to think, and let me try to take it to another spot. Yeah,
because there's nothing wrong with healthy competition. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong, but there is a line that I draw when I feel that becomes envy, because then envy is not good for me personally speaking. When I had one of my dearest friends that I just met in November, now he's one of my dearest friends, go, dude, why are you doing that? Just fly up to my shop and we'll knock it out, you and me together. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, boom. I was on a flight. There was a bunch of pipe on the floor. There was some flat plate and a jig. And then we just went, and in 4 days, that frame was done.
Damn.
That's the beauty of it. When a guy like that, his name's Rick Bray, he has a company called RKB Customs. That's how I want to be. I want people to be able to go, hey man, can you help me? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because again, if those guys that I've mentioned before, Billy, Paul, Jeff, Will, Bobby Seeger, all of those cats hadn't taken their time to show me something and light that fire in me, we wouldn't be having this discussion, dude.
No, man, it's amazing. And it goes even further back. I mean, I think some people are blessed. You had your dad who was supportive of your musical direction, where a lot of dads would have said, and you know our culture too. Dude.
Oh yeah.
A lot of dads
trust me.
would have said, you're not doing that.
My mom was the one. She was flipping tortillas and making she was making huevos rancheros in the minute. She was flipping tortillas and she looked at me. In Spanish, she said, "You're crazy," and then turned around. And then later on, it just so happened that my dad was like, "No, that's how you become a man." I can't. And I remember hearing him in their room going, "We can't hold him like this, Maria. We have to let him do his thing." And that, dude, was beyond my comprehension at that time. But now, all these years later, I get it. I get it, and everything that he's ever, my pictures on my wall right there, all my dad with that ugly Harley and my mom and dad behind my chopper, so my mom and dad with the first bike I ever built, so, and a lot of people don't have that, but they do have somebody around them that believes in them. And if they can just see that and kind of tap into that, even if they don't believe in themselves, because listen, dude, there's many, many times pre and post the band. And even now where I go, what am I doing? What have I done? I left a situation that made this amount of money, that did this, blah, 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 to do this. And then I sit back and I look at it before I go to bed and I look at all the things in my garage and I go, I made that with these hands, with help from a lot of people, but also from the one guy who just said, you can do this, man. You can do this. So I think when I get to that point where I let the world and, social media and all that other stuff that gets clogged in this head, I have to go back to the basics and remember that I can. And I say that I had a conversation with a little girl drummer the other day that was on the Monsters of Rock cruise. And I was like, you can do anything you want to. You can. I'm proof of it. I was just a kid like you one day. Well, I want to play drums, and look what happened. What happened. But it's not without a lot of work. A lot of work. It's work.
I think there's probably a good amount of risk involved. There's
a certain amount of rolling the dice and because again, we hear that saying, there's no such thing as luck, bro. It's where proper preparation meets opportunity. I live by that as well as all the other things my old man told me. If I do the work honestly, and I check my motive of why I'm doing the work, and something good happens, I go, right on. And if something doesn't happen the way I want it to, I go, okay, there's another lesson learned. How do I adapt that to the next scenario that comes up?
Yeah. It's sometimes you win, sometimes you learn mentality, right?
Absolutely. Because if you learn, you don't really lose.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
You only lose when you go, know.
And Xavier, it's like you took this life that a lot of people would have hung their hat on and said, yep, I was that drummer I wanted to be. Yes, I traveled the world. We made a record. You can still hear us every now and then. They'll play us on the radio. A lot of people would have hung it up at that point. But for you to go then into the motorcycle world, dude, it's like, where did you get the confidence to say, I'm going to leave all this, which is a dream life for a lot of people, and say, I'm going to go into this other thing?
It's funny because myself and the other founding member, there was two founding members in Buck Cherry, Keith Nelson and Josh Todd. When I left, Keith Nelson left, which was a huge, huge shock to everybody in the Buck Cherry world, because Josh and Keith were like Tyler and Perry, Lennon and McCartney. And I remember us having a conversation one day when I told him I wanted to do this. And he's like, dude, look what happened with the band. He goes, I literally thought we were going to put one record out, do a couple of tour dates and break up. And then we'd be like, okay, cool. We did it. 16 years later, 8 records later, 5 world tours, blah, blah, all that stuff, Grammy nomination, Billboard, you name it. Nobody knew. And I still speak, I just talked to him yesterday. So him and I are still very, very, very close. And he was the one guy that was just like, I know you can, because I knew you could do this. That's why I called you. And I remember thinking that the day before Thanksgiving 2016, I was flying home from New York to Texas for the holidays. Mm-hmm. And I was flying over the city. And I thought to myself, it's time. I'm done. And I don't know if it was confidence. I don't know if it was excitement. I don't know if it was terror, or all of them mixed together in a nice little pot. But I knew one thing. I didn't love playing drums anymore. And the thought of building motorcycles, to whatever extent, whether I was going to go work for Billy, I was going to come back and work at a Harley shop, I just wanted to be around the other thing that I loved just as much as music, and that was motorcycles. So when I told people that, again, remember, they were just like, why would you go from being that guy, that term that everybody likes to use, rock star, which I hate, to being a bike guy? Yeah. And I answered one interview really early on with simply because they make me happy. I love motorcycles. And it took me a minute when I got out of the music aspect. I didn't touch drums for 2.5 years. And then my buddy Keith called me and said, okay, enough. Yeah, I get it. You love motorcycles. You're winning awards. You're building, blah, blah. I need you to come make a record with me. And I went, okay. So I flew to LA. I made a record with him, and I left there going, okay, I'm good. I still love to play music. I love to play drums, but I love to build motorcycles. And once again, it was one of my mentors that said, so why do you have to choose? Why can you not do both? And I go, wait, yeah, why can't I do both? Wow. I own the company and I'm the drummer. Wait a minute. So that's literally, I think, because there was more excitement of the unknown and that thing about, well, what if I take everything that I've learned from the music world, apply it to motorcycles and the people in it, and just trying to harness that thing that makes me happy? Because there's a lot of people walking around in the world, bro, that are completely unhappy. Millionaires, billionaires, people on Skid Row. It doesn't matter. The spectrum is wide. And again, my old man, I never wanted to go to bed at night thinking, what if I would have tried harder? What if I would have did this? I don't do that. Now I'm like, okay, if I give it everything I have and I fail with no excuses. If I half-ass it and I fail, I got nobody to blame but me. So that's what that whole thing came from. Like, okay, love music, don't want to be on the road anymore for 10 months out of the year, for like I was for the last 16 years. Want to build a motorcycle. How do I build a motorcycle? I don't know, but I'm going to find out, because there's a lot of my buddies that have done it. Man. And that was it. And it was literally just throwing myself into learning how to TIG weld and learning how to make spacers. And then, Billy giving me my first lathe and figuring out how to, and a lot of error, bro, a lot of mess ups. But that's the beauty of it, is because without those errors and broken parts and broken bits and broken taps, and I wouldn't be here. And again, I'm not satisfied with here. I'm excited to see what's going to happen in the next couple of months. Like this bike, I'm building it for a charity organization. I got commissioned to build it for a company called High Seas Rally. And it's literally a biker rally on a cruise. What?
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Check it out. Go to highseasrally.com, and it's awesome. And it benefits diabetes foundations that I'm really a big part of, because I have a family member that suffers from type 2 real bad. So when they came to me via a friend of mine from Nickelback, that knew that I wasn't in Buckcherry anymore, that I was building motorcycles, and they wanted to take this high seas rally thing and make it bigger and better. They called me and asked me, so what do you think? And I go, well, what are you offering other than just beer, booze, and a bunch of guys with bellies and leather vests on a boat? Because you don't have motorcycles on the boat, right? And they're like, well, no. I go, okay, so what are you offering? We started talking and we had some great ideas. They flew down here into my little 450 square foot garage. And they were like, well, we thought you were going to have a huge, I'm like, no, why? I got everything I need, you know?
Yeah.
But now I don't, because I'm running out of room. So that's the next step. But I said, you know, why don't we build a custom motorcycle and raffle it off on the boat via Facebook Live? They're like, oh my God. So then that led into all these different ideas. So I'm building this bike from scratch. And every month I show the progress on the build. And then at the end of the year, we get to raffle it off on a cruise.
Dude, that's insane.
You know? And then I'm going through all of the events pretty much throughout the whole year, promoting this company as well as Providence Cycle Works. And because I'm building the motorcycles. So it's a really great pairing of two companies, you know. But again, I don't know how to do any of that stuff, dude. I'm not out there like hustling, like, hey, call me, we'll build it. I'm not that dude, you know. And there are other dudes that do that really, really well. I'm not that guy. It just so happened that somebody knew somebody and somebody knew somebody, and here we go.
Yeah.
And again, it's so crazy because I've only been out of the band a little over 3 years, and all of this has happened. But again, you know, I attribute all of that to the people that I surround myself with that are awesome people that are encouraging and that know that I want to learn, you know, and
amazing. Dude, I got to tell you, when I saw your bike at the Lone Star Rally this year or last year, and, you know, I did a YouTube video and a part of it was looking at the bikes that were, you know, in the show and whatnot. I learned from, I believe it was the bike builder Brandon Keene, that your bikes had to be ridden. You guys all got together and had to ride those bikes.
Oh yeah.
But
80 miles.
Did they all make it?
No, I think it was like 73 miles, to be honest. It was, and here's the deal. Chris decided when he did that show that he wanted to do something different than all the other shows across the United States. And what that means is that they come out of a trailer, they get placed in a situation, they sit there, they get gooed on, they get ogled over, and then they go back in the trailer. And then somebody wins a lot of money or they get some sort of accolade. And again, Chris being the kind of man who wants to get the industry back to motorcycles, and motorcycles should run.
Yes.
And they should brake and they should shift and all of those things that motorcycles are supposed to do. Right. And he decided, he came up with that. And there was a lot of people, even some of the invited builders that were kind of like, you know, and
well, yeah, because a lot of times,
because a lot of them are I hate to say it, but they're glorified paperweights.
Yeah, and a lot of them turn into building a statue of a bike.
Right. And I didn't have that mentality. He was like, it's going to be at least 75 miles. I'm like, okay. And it made sense afterwards when he told me, well, wouldn't you want to know that your customer is going to get on your motorcycle and ride it 80 miles and be okay? And I was like, well, yeah, that makes total sense. I never thought about it that way till he put it, you know, but it was awesome because, you know, one, you had guys breaking down, but you also had the guys that they were riding with helping them. So that was the most beautiful part about it, is that you had, once again, a community of dudes that rode, that built, that were literally helping each other out. And every one of them made it except for one. But you had to finish the course and the mileage before you could be entered to win the $10,000 grand prize. And it would, dude, I got to ride with Bill Dodge, who's a huge influence in my life. Roadside Marty, Magic Mike, who actually won, Austin Martin, and there was one other person that I can't remember. I think it was one of Austin's buddies that works with him in his shop. But there was nothing cooler than being at Galveston on the seawall.
Oh yeah.
Breaking the law, bro. 7 wide, just yeah. And it was, you remember, it was cold.
It was cold and windy as hell.
And I was thinking, this sucks. I'm not doing this. And then everybody fired up and we're all just, and it was looking over and seeing Bill Dodge like smiling at me and nodding.
Amazing.
I mean, that's just like when Billy rode my bike and I made a video of it. He pulls into his parking lot. He goes, and he does a skid mark. He goes, brakes work. I was like, yes, So hey, you had to finish the ride, and that's what it's about. It's about the ride. It's about the experience. It's not like, hey, this looks really cool and it's glitzy and it's got metal flake and a bunch of chrome and it just sits there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, sometimes different is better than better. This is something that I try to remember. And you don't see bike shows where people have to ride the bike. You see them trailer on and off. They look great. But I mean, good luck if it starts.
And again, everybody is different. And if they're cool with that, metal, it works for them. It doesn't work for me because I look at my motorcycles the same way I look at my drums. There's no electronics. There's no triggers. There's nothing. You get a real drum set. You get a real drum sound. You get a real motorcycle that at times probably will leak because it's a 53 pan head, and I had one guy come up at that show and go, well, you got a little bit of a leak right there. I'm like, yeah, that means it has oil and it runs. And he was like, oh, so.
That is the old Harley way. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, to some people, that's not how they look at a motorcycle. To me, that's how I look at a motorcycle because that's how I learned from the guys before me. That there's nothing in the rule books that even there is a rule book that says it can't look bitchin' and still be rideable. There's nothing that says that.
I'm really curious that earlier on you were mentioning reaching to other people that people think that rock and roll was dead and reaching out to those people. Same with motorcycle riding and whatnot. And as a motorcycle builder that builds more of the vintage shopper style, how do you feel about Harley trying to reach out to the current market with something that's completely opposite to what we know as Harley Davidson, which is the Big B twin?
Right. I mean, as just one dude who, again, hasn't been in the middle of the industry that long, but has been watching it for many, 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 many years. I think they're trying to do what everybody else is trying to do, which is offer something that's going to bring a different demo in. Everybody's talking about save the world, save the planet, electricity is the way to go, blah, blah, blah. I personally have a hard time envisioning the way the bikes look aesthetically because I'm all about aesthetics. I think that they have a team that is doing their best to try to get new people in, but guys like myself and the older riders are that's just not cool looking. I mean, and how many times have they tried it? The V-Rod, blah, 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 blah. Go on and on and on. And there's probably some guy out there that has a V-Rod on the forum or that's listening going, fuck you. But again, if we all rode panheads, there would be no need for knuckles or shovels or M8s, So I think that they're just trying to do whatever they can to bring more people in and not lose the people that they already have. Because we know that as soon as they got rid of the Dyna, bro, people were like, I'm out.
I've always been, okay, so speaking of which, and you tell me what, I have my own opinion about it, but so I actually owned a Dyna for about a year, and great motorcycle. When it came to really handling, I'd probably take an FXR over a Dyna. And touring frames are basically a larger version of the FXR. So when people were really upset they got rid of the Dyna and then you introduced these new softos, and granted, it almost feels like when you look at when the softos first came out, like the new softo, it almost felt like Harley was kind of a copy of itself. It wasn't like it really did. It looked like, the new if you look like Yamaha's, like the Softail Yamaha Cruisers or whatever, that's kind of what
It reminded me of when I first saw the Suzuki full floater monoshock system. I was like, that's what it looks like. It looks like this. I'm like, okay. But again, I mean, if they kept making the same thing over and over, there would be no variation. Okay, I think just like with music, when you put out a concept record or a record that doesn't have what your former fans were into, they're going to leave. But the hope is that you bring in some new blood.
Yeah.
Because the people that were once 15 listening to that song are now 30.
Yeah.
And they have their own families and they don't listen to that same music. So you kind of have to evolve. I mean, in some situations you get really lucky, like AC/DC put out the same 4-chord songs for the last 40 years, but it worked.
Yep.
I think that Harley is just doing what any major manufacturer, cars, motorcycles, they're just trying to find that next thing. And I can't really speak bad about it other than it's just not for me. It's kind of like Easy Rider being that magazine that is now the way that it is.
Yeah. Well,
they're gonna try something new. Not for me.
Yeah.
If I want to look at fashion, I'll pick up a fucking GQ magazine. How about that? Sorry.
Yeah. So with that said, so obviously Harley's trying. I mean, the new Softail platform, regardless of how I feel about the aesthetics of most of their bikes, because I really like the old vintage stuff. I think that's what has made Harley what it is today.
Right.
I understand, you and me, we understand where it's what they're trying to do and where it's going. With that said, I think when they got rid of the Dyna, I mean, I've ridden an FXR, and granted, super underpowered, but I mean, a fantastic frame to ride on. I mean, I ride a touring model,
right?
So they ride fantastic. So I always wondered why Harley decided to go with something that was already out there, because my first bike was a Honda VLX 600, which is monoshock Softail frame.
Exactly.
Correct. So like when I rode the new Harley, it was like, okay, this is kind of like a hybrid between the two, and it's exactly what it felt like. It felt like a Japanese bike with a American power plant in it.
Right.
I don't know what your opinion would be on this, but I think really, if they would have come out just instead of replacing the Dyna with all these new Softails, they probably just should have just gone with rebuilding the FXR frame, because it is a great handling FXR.
Right.
It's not. I think the new Softail frame does handle better than the FXR frame to a certain extent. But with that said, I do think that kind of still captured the Americana soul of Harley Davidson, as opposed to the new Softail frame.
I personally think that you are always gonna have your core diehard, old school looking, sounding, feeling, leaking, working on guys, because that's what we love. We love to tinker, we love to fix it, we love to know this about it, etc. And when one of our buddies has the same problem, oh dude, well, it was your lifter, what you got to do is blah 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 blah. Much like I view even cars, I will take a 68 Camaro over a 2020 anything. I don't care.
Yeah.
Aston Martin Vantage DB9, a BMW M Series. If it doesn't have a carburetor and I can't limp it home with a shoestring, I don't want it. That being said, I think that to some degree, Harley is almost out of touch with what the buying public and or the communities really, really want. I think that to some degree, they kind of throw the dice on the table with these crazy new elaborate configurations and the way they look aesthetically, and then getting rid of a completely frame that literally, because you don't hear Panhead Nation, you don't hear Knucklehead Nation, you hear Dyna Nation, you hear Bagger Nation, and you have the FXR division community. Now, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe, but in 4 or 5 years, when all of that thing fully swings around, something's going to be brought back, because they're going to go, this worked and we got rid of it. This really didn't do as well as we thought, so we should look what they did with the FXR. Did they not bring it back after a while?
Oh yeah, they sure did.
Right. And they discontinued it. So you had a lot of cats out there that were like, from the Shovel FXR to this year was okay. Then they got it right with that one.
The early 90s. Yeah, that's the one.
You know what I'm saying? So then they brought it back and it was kind of cool, but it didn't have that thing that year had. So I think at some point in time, a decade will go by, they'll have different engineers, and somebody's going to come in and go, and God willing, Willie's still alive, will go, hey, this is the numbers that we're looking at between what we did, where we're at, and where we want to be. We should probably go back to what we knew was tried and true. And that's the way I feel about it, because I mean, nobody ever expected to see the term performance bagger.
Yep, right. That is that was uncommon.
We have a whole, because when you think about it, baggers were meant or usually associated with geezer guys that were going to get milk or that were going to ride across the country because they were retired and could. Now you've got the dudes doing the same thing that you did with the Dynas and the FXRs, with the big 124s and the 145s. And now you've got them doing it on baggers, which is a whole other swing, a movement that's going to last for a while.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like the old saying of a party. The party could suck, but people will go to the party because other people are going to the party.
Yep.
It's the same thing. You know, it's like monkey see, monkey do. And you see that with anything. You see that with bobbers, with choppers, with baggers, with Dynas. It's just the way we do things, because it's an influence. We have influence on the way somebody else takes it and then puts their little spin, their little version on it. And then that guy takes it to a rally. Oh, and that guy sees it, takes a picture of it. And next thing you know, you've got this whole mosh pit, which is really exciting. But when you get back to looking at the Harley display, you're like, not seeing it, you know. And I could be wrong. I haven't ridden one, and I won't. There's a reason why. Until the back gives out.
You don't want to love it. You don't want to love it.
Well, maybe not. Maybe. And the other thing is, like, what would I do with it? I have no tools to work on that thing. I'm like, I don't know. And then I got to take it.
Set of specialty.
Then I got to take it to a guy like you and pay you money.
Trust me, you don't want me touching your motorcycle.
Now we're back to that whole thing of me downloading some app and going, is that the advanced curve or what? I don't.
That would be the live wire.
Yeah. Why are all my lights blinking? What did I do? You know. So
yeah.
I mean, I think that there's, like anything else in society and within a movement, within a culture, music, motorcycles, fashion, whatever it is, there's always going to be those people, those companies that want to try something new. Because if we didn't try something new, we wouldn't know what we didn't like. We'd all be like riding knuckles, panheads, and shovels going, whoa, now what? You know? Yeah. So to some degree, there's an elitist, I feel, not really an elitist, but there's a core group of men and women who understand that a pan with a 4-speed on a rigid frame with a Springer front end, no fucking front brake, and a drum in the rear is just cool. And scary. To some degree, you know.
So the I think it's hilarious that you say that, because I bought it in Dirty D's knows this. I bought a VW bug in Mexico and I just drove it back and I did a whole video about it because why not, right? That would be a fun and I did it for the experience. And everybody that I talked to, I mean, obviously I was trying to like make money out of the bug and whatnot, and I'm still trying to. But like I could have very easily just put it on a platform and just shipped it across the border, but whole like experience of driving it and like, this is going to break down, this is going to have issues, but like the memory, and like as you were saying, with being with a band and just traveling, those memories, like they'll forever stay with you. And I think with old Harleys that's very similar. It's the exact same thing, because I remember when I was speaking to somebody that I was talking about the band, I was like, you know, I'm going to be a failed drummer and I'm not going to be relevant in the music community, and crying like, you know, there was sand in my vagina and blah, 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 blah. And he goes, hey man, so let me get this straight. So somebody's going to come to your house. They're going to go in your room, take all of your records, all of your memories. They're going to suck all that shit out of your brain and you're going to be left with nothing. Is that what you're telling me? And I'm like,
Well, no, dude, that's just stupid. He goes, exactly. Everything that you've done, all the memories you have, that's the point. All that other stuff doesn't mean anything. And it's just like you in the Bug. You're going to go,
Yep.
I remember driving that going, at any moment, this could just explode. But for right now, I'm having a blast. You know?
Oh yeah. And
So,
when it doesn't go your way, you're like, it's like, this
No.
freaking sucks. But those are the memories that
That's
stick
where
in
the
you. Like,
story
man, I
comes
remember
from.
that trip
Yeah.
from hell.
I got to walk 2 miles to the AutoZone so I can get a belt. Yeah. I mean,
Yep.
but like I write about all the time in Cycle Source Magazine. It's all about the ride and the experience, no matter what type of ride, no matter what type of experience it is, you know?
Do you think that so right now, like nowadays, it's, you know, with the current generation, it's reliability, saving the planet, yada, yada, yada. Do you think the whole, I know this is going to break, I need an adventure in my life, I need something to go horribly wrong to know that I'm alive, has gone away from this generation? Or do you think
Absolutely.
it just seems like there's so much like reliability and commodity and everything that we own nowadays? And I think
everything is PC. Everything has to be perfectly this and perfectly that. I mean, we didn't buy these motorcycles in the first place because we thought that they were never going to break down. That was the beautiful point about it. When you've got 4 of your brothers trying to figure out why your compensator sprocket won't come off, you know, there's a certain excitement to that. And I think that's lost nowadays because everything is point and click. You don't have to go to a record store anymore and pick out the vinyl and pull it out and put it on the record player, or even the CD for that matter, for Christ's sake. Those are going away. You know, it's the same way. It's like I get on my bike, I hit the start button, the injectors do their thing, and then I take off. And that's great for some people, again. But for me, it doesn't work that way. I don't want it like that. And I think that there is a very small group of younger riders that are like, they don't want that either, man. They want to know how this thing smells. They want to know what happens when you pull the magneto plug off. They want to know all that stuff, you know, and I love that. And there are the other riders who don't, you know, but I think that there's an air of it's got to be too moldable. Again, the category, it's got to be too much in this box, or we can't. It's not. We can't. We just can't.
It has to be. It has to be comfortable.
There's no edge. There's no edge.
The man. The only thing that I can think. So when I rode the first time I ever rode an Ironhead, it was my buddy's Ironhead, square tires. I mean, just.
Oh
yeah. Like I mean, And he had a cheap Springer front end on it, you know, bolt on rigid, you know, the whole thing was just sketchy. And just riding it, I literally rode it from the dealership, inside the dealership, to the parking lot, and I thought, there's no way anyone could ride this on the highway. This is the sketchiest thing. Like, why would anyone do this? And then
it's dangerous.
Exactly. And so it really, I remember, so I did an Iron Butt last year at one point. It was like the first one I've ever done. I just wanted to do it. And there was no rhyme or reason. I didn't care for the patch. I just wanted to ride 1,000 miles and just see how it was. And I have an 06 bagger that I bought at wholesale. So there was a lot of things that were wrong with it. And I just remember being on the side of the road, like the strip shifter, changed that. My buddy put a hole in his primary. All fluids came out at 3 a.m, you know, in the middle of Arkansas.
And
I just remember thinking to myself, okay, this, I get it now.
And
you feel alive because
that was
anything could go wrong.
One, because you're like, okay, can I do this? Do I have the mechanical know-how to get on this jalopy? Because in a sense,
that is the definition. Yes.
held together with duct tape and bubble gum, and ride. And if something goes wrong, can I fix it? That is awesome, you know. And it's like Chris did this thing the other day. He goes, "So check it out. Kids are sitting in the front lawn, right? They're on their bicycles. You come cruising down the street on your shovel head rigid frame, and you go." You do a big, and then you do a burnout, and you look at the kid and you go, "Don't ever buy one of these," and take off. That kid is going to go,
ultimate temptation.
I want that. They're not going to go, oh my God. They're going to go, I want that. That's that feeling, you know? And I feel sad when people don't get that feeling, that rush, whatever it is, you know. Some people like to fix Volkswagens on the side of a road. Other people like to jump out of an airplane. It's the same thing.
Let me clarify something. I don't like fixing Volkswagens on the side of any road. It is not fun. But like you said, don't buy one of these. Don't do it.
But if you
don't have a blast, if you do.
If you don't want to fix it on the side of the road, don't buy one. Buy a brand new. Yeah. So
I had an instance. I think I made it to Waco after I replaced the generator, and it blew off again. I mean, it was just a big disaster.
Jeez.
A friend of mine came to the rescue, and his son, he's a teenager now, and we're all, you know, we're all Hispanic. We're talking in Spanish, and we're just laughing. And I'm like, it's like I'm teaching you something valuable here. You know how to work. And in my mind, I didn't specify. It's like, I'll teach you something valuable. And I didn't say, you know, working in a bug,
sure,
or whatever. And he goes, "Yeah, you're right. I should never buy a Volkswagen bus."
Never.
That was this.
That was a lesson.
That was the lesson right there. Not you should work on your own stuff and fix it.
That was the
whatever.
lesson.
Yeah.
And you should have done that. You should have done that line from Tombstone. Oh, you're an educated man. I hate him even more.
That would have been the perfect line. That was a missed opportunity. You live and learn. The next time,
exactly. Next time,
find another friend.
Put that one in your pocket, and you can pull that out next time.
Man. Hey, Xavier, I know we're going on like an hour and a half, man.
Wow.
I know. Can you
imagine?
I told Lugnuts before you got on, I said, I guarantee you this is going to go by so fast because I had four mini discussions I was thinking about in my mind. And I thought, okay, if they're 15 minutes a pop, we'll be at an hour.
Yeah.
Dude, I don't even know if we got to one of those topics because we've been talking about so much.
We've been having a good time. That's all it's about.
This is that thing that Chris was talking about. Well, what do you do when you talk about motorcycles in life with your buddies? Well, okay, there it is. Boom, you know. So
it goes in 20 different directions.
Absolutely.
So here's what I want to, and for everybody who's out there in the chat, I think we had about 40 people out there. Before we get ready to wrap it up. And this could be another hour discussion, which we're not going to do, but next on the horizon for you, man. I know that your current band, Black Smoke Sinners, is playing in Daytona.
Yes, we are doing
coming up in March.
Yeah, and Black Smoke Sinners is literally myself, Chris Callan from Cycle Source, who's a great bass player, and 3 amazing musicians from here in the local Austin area: Robert Wagner on vocals, Dave Beeson guitar, and Jake Sherrod on guitar. And we assembled with literally our first show back in November at the Lone Star Rally as just a thing to do to play music. And it turned into one thing. And again, here we are. We've had promoters call us up and go, "Hey, so how do we book you guys?" So we're playing 2 nights at the Broken Spoke and 1 night at Iron Horse during Bike Week. And I believe it's the 10th, 11th, and 12th.
Yeah.
And it's just a bunch of dudes, and it's a cover band, but we play covers that not everybody does. So we do some deep cuts, and we happen to have a singer that just is amazing. He grabs you by the balls or by your cooch and goes, "You're in my living room. Let's party." And it's awesome, dude. And again, to see all of our builder friends down there, shirts off, you know, metal horns, and just playing a good time, dude. It's a blast. So blacksmokesinners.com, Facebook, Instagram. And so we're there anyways doing motorcycles. Why not play a little music and have a good time? You know?
Joke. And I know I was so disappointed because I just saw this yesterday, your schedule. I think you guys just played like February 16th in Austin.
We did a show on Sunday. And again, I had just come off that Monsters of Rock cruise. So I was here. We did 2 quick rehearsals, and then we played that show on Sunday. And then I was back to building on Monday. I was like, what the hell? Where did January go? You know, so
insane, man.
But it's a good time, you know?
Yeah. So you've got that bike that you're building now for the cruise. You've got Black Smoke Sinners playing at Daytona. I mean, you've got 1,000,001 things going on. Let me ask you one last question. And it's something that Lugnuts and I were discussing before you jumped on. Can you just tell us a quick little story about how did you get the inspiration to put a water faucet on your bike? Lugnuts was like, "That's brilliant," because they're hard to, manipulate.
Yeah, traditional petcokes are a pain to deal with.
I'm gonna move over here because I think my iPad's getting low. Be It was it's a company named Bulletproof Designs, a guy by the name of Damien, who's a really good buddy of mine. And he kind of made those, but he had never really, he hadn't I guess he hadn't really pushed them. And I thought it was brilliant. And because I'm always looking for that little thing that sets it apart, kind of like right. Billy always does. And I saw that and I was like, hey, dude, I got to get one of those. He was like, yeah, let me send it out to you. And I put it on Grace and people flipped out. And then I just put it on Lizzie, which is that filigree looking Softail that I did, that I took to the St. Louis show. So it's on her as well. But it's cool, man. And the funny thing is it doesn't have a reserve. So, and since it's at the back of the tank, Frisco style, you don't get much of a warning. It doesn't go blah, 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 blah. And then you hit reserve and you're like, oh, okay, I got another 4 miles. Right. Dude, it goes, brrr, dip, 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 done. You're out. You're coasting. Nobody cares, and you're looking for an Exxon station. You're like, oh shit, now what? So. Dude, it's cool, man. Cool. They're really cool. And again, it's a company called Bulletproof Designs. And right they, Damien, along with so many other parts companies, Paco and Tech Cycle and SNS and Baker, have been really, really, really awesome at kind of just having my back with a bunch of stuff, and it's a real honor to have that stuff on my bike, because again, much like my endorsers, music wise, I don't use anything that I don't believe in. Just because it's free doesn't mean it's good. Amen. And my brother Jeff Cochran always tells me, well, if it's free, now you got to use it. I'm like, yep, you got to use it. So there's a lot of times where I get stuff from guys in the industry, Fab Kevin, Bobby Seeger at Indian Larry, that are just to an extent, they kind of just, it's a nudge of okay, okay. You're doing something. We don't know what it is, but and I think that they see that I'm really passionate about it and I'm truthful about it. I don't claim to be anything that I'm not. And I certainly don't hold myself in any regards with some of the icons that are on my walls. I'm just a guy who loves to kind of tinker with stuff and hopefully learn as he goes on and make some really bitchin' friendships, man. I feel really sad for the people who leave this earth and haven't created great friendships and great memories. It bums me out because it's all out there for the taking. Sometimes we just decide not to take it, not to act on it, and that saddens me, so.
Well, you know what, man, with that said, that's a great segue for us to close the night. Look, speaking of friendships and connections and stuff, the next time you're in San Antonio, drop me a line. We'll go get that lunch or whatnot. I want to see you guys in Austin sometime. If not, maybe we cross paths at the next Lone Star rally. Absolutely. But I know somehow, some way, dude, this has been one of the coolest talks that we've had.
Thank you.
I learned a lot just about, bikes, music, life, that type of thing. What do you say, Lug Nuts? Good one?
It was a good one. I concur.
I concur, Doctor. I concur.
I concur.
And again, thank you to you guys. I appreciate it for just giving me a moment to just say how I feel about the industry and what's going on, and share a little experience, because that's it. That's all I got, dude. Everything else that I can't give anybody anything other than my experiences, because anything else is an opinion, and we know what opinions are like. So there you go.
Everybody has
so much.
Everybody has one, and they're not cool.
Well, thanks for being on, man. Everybody out there in the chat, go check him out at Providence Cycle Works with an X. ProvidenceCycleWorks.com, man. Go scope them out.
Yeah. And if you come up this way, stop by. I'll make some fajitas and we'll have some tortillas. You too, Lug Nuts.
Hey, man, listen.
Get on that bagger, comfy bagger of yours, and come up my way.
It might be a bagger. There's nothing comfy about it. I'll say that much.
We'll do it, man.
Right on.
All right, bro. I appreciate you, man.
Thanks for coming on. Ride safe, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Right on. All right, take it easy, bro.
Bye.
Peace out. All right, everybody out there in the chat, peace out. Thanks for joining in, guys, and we'll see you on the next. Peace.
And that was that.
Nice.
That was
very
pretty
cool.
Awesome.
All right, dude. I'm gonna catch up to you in the DMs.
All right. Hey, how did that? Did you already do that Vegas trip?
Yes, I did. Oh,
There you go,
dude. Let me tell. It was amazing. Went to the antique motorcycle auction. Those Indian Larry bikes, bro.
What did they go for?
One of them went for $225,000. And they have a tag on it that says it doesn't even run.
What?
Yes, dude. It's one of those bikes that's just like the statue of the bike, but it's that bike. They call it the chain of mystery. It's an
I know which. I know exactly which one.
You know the one.
Yeah,
the chain
the
of,
one.
All you have to do is say the chain, and you can envision the swing arms are chains.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. That is wild, man. I was curious to see how that went.
It was nuts.
That's pretty awesome, man. What a trip.
It was cool, man. And then I have some friends that live close by in Henderson. So I stayed with them and we just had a blast, dude. Did all the dumb Vegas stuff. Didn't gamble much, but just had a good time out there, man.
Yeah, that's all about a good time, man. Man, I was really hoping I didn't my cousin was following me on that trip on the VW Bug. And I was like, if they wouldn't have come, man, I probably would have stayed in San Antonio, man. I was pretty beat by the time I got past San Antonio.
I'll bet.
Yeah, I felt like garbage after that.
Yeah,
rotted fuel line and broken oil reservoir. It was not a
But man,
I was beat.
We do have to do a Texas connection trip, man. Now we've got Xavier out in Austin. Either that or hit up Houston in November. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, man. I think it'd be cool to go visit Xavier. Maybe we should meet up for that because it's kind of like almost closer to you than to me. But Dallas is away from everything, so
That's right.
I'm always down for a longer ride. So it's always a good time. So maybe we should meet in Austin or something like that.
We'll do it, man. We'll figure it out this year.
All right, man.
For sure. All right, brother.
Thanks for having me along on this.
Oh, man.
That was pretty awesome.
As always, I'm so glad that you were here, man, because you asked him some questions that would never occurred to me because I don't even know that much about bikes.
I don't even know that much about bikes.
You got more than me,
just
man.
what I get to see when I'm at work. That's about it.
I'm getting ready to buy an old piece of crap beater and try to learn.
Yeah, that you will learn real quick because they all take work. It's what the guys that I work with, they're like, man, like you want an Evo, you want a shovel head, you want this or that. It's like, I hope you like wrenching on stuff because you will be like 90% of the time you'll be wrenching on it. I was like, well, I already do that on my bagger, so maybe I don't need one. So,
man. Dude. Well, thanks for being on, man. I appreciate it, dude.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. It was a good time.
All right, man. I'll holler at you next time.
All right, man. Take care.
All right, bro. Peace out.